Building a Personal Success Foundation, featuring Zig Ziglar. The tallest trees have deep root structures that help them withstand the strongest winds. The tallest buildings sit atop tons of concrete, which helps them endure the elements. Zig Ziglar claims that great people, like great trees or buildings, also possess a personal success foundation, a foundation that helps them to stand tall. He should know. Zig Ziglar has often been referred to as America's ambassador to the world. Millions of people in more than 100 countries have read his best-selling books, including See You at the Top and Top Performance. Ziglar is a leading authority in the area of human engineering and is one of the world's most sought-after speakers. Let's tune in as Zig Ziglar explains how to build a personal success foundation.
Our session today is on building a success foundation. As you know, the foundation to anything is extraordinarily important. Forbes magazine, which is internationally famous, did a study on entrepreneurs. They discovered something rather interesting. They discovered that entrepreneurs invariably make their money after they move to a new location. Now wait a minute, don't start packing your bags yet. You know what they discovered? Here in the States, they discovered that some of the people made their money when they moved from Dallas to Denver. But others made their money when they moved from Denver to Dallas. Some made their money when they moved from Chicago to St. Louis. Others made their money when they moved from St. Louis to Chicago. You know what they discovered? The location has got nothing to do with it in most cases. Then what is the difference? The difference is very simple. When they moved to a new location, they went in there planning to succeed. They went in there preparing to succeed, and they went in there expecting to succeed. You see, you were born to win. But to be the winner you were born to be, you got to plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win. Andrew Carnegie at one time had 43 millionaires working for him. Now that was well over 100 years ago. Now folks, 100 years ago, a millionaire was somebody with money. I mean, lots of money. A newspaper reporter got wind of this. He went to Mr. Carnegie and he said, how on earth did you manage to hire 43 millionaires? And Mr. Carnegie said, well, none of them were millionaires when I hired them. Then the obvious question is, then what did you do to develop them to the degree that they became so valuable to you that you could pay them so much money that they became millionaires? Carnegie taught us a tremendous lesson with his answer. He said you develop people in exactly the same way you mine gold. When you go in a gold mine, you move tons of dirt to find an ounce of gold. But you don't go in there looking for the dirt. You go in there looking for the gold. Every day as you deal with people, you will see them properly as the winners they were born to be. And when you see people that way, you treat them that way. That improves relationships dramatically. And that's so important because, you see, more happiness is brought about because of good relationships, and more misery is brought about because of poor relationships than any other single thing. I'd like to share with you a story which gets into things which I believe winners are able to accomplish in their life. Had a young man from Canada in my office several years ago. And this young man had a close friend who was deeply concerned about him. It seems that this young man was ambitious to the degree that he was literally destroying his health by working a ridiculous schedule. His boss was only 27, and this 22-year-old admired his boss so much because he was so successful, he wanted to be like him. But the guy was working 16, 18 hours a day. On 2 or 3 occasions, he had literally gone to sleep driving the 30 miles on his way to work. His family was disintegrating. And as we sat there talking about success, I asked the young man what constituted success in his mind. And we chatted back and forth, and we finally came to this conclusion that in order to be successful, happiness has got to figure in there. You should be healthy. In other words, if you're setting goals, you want to be happy, you want to be healthy, you want to be at least reasonably prosperous. I've got an idea that some of you folks would like to be unreasonably prosperous. You want to be secure, you want to have friends, you want to have peace of mind, and if you have a family, you want good family relationships. This young man said, those are the things that I believe would make me successful. I said, well, now, let's look at those things one by one, and as we look at them, let's talk about your friend whom you admire so much. I said, how happy is he? And the young man said, well, I don't think he's very happy at all. And I said, well, why do you say that? He said, well, first of all, he has ulcers. And I said, well, that tells us something also about his peace of mind and his health, does it not? And he said, well, yes, it does. So I said, I've asked you one question about your hero. We've determined that he fails on the happiness bit. We fail him on the healthy bit. We fail him on the peace of mind bit. So he answers, of the 7 things we want, he fails on 3 of them with one question. I said, second question I want to ask you is how prosperous is. And he said, well, he's sure making a lot of money. I said, okay, let's give him a passing grade on that one. 3 failures and a passing, okay? He said, right. I said, tell me, how secure is he? Well, he said, he's about as secure as money can make you. And I said, 2 brothers, each worth in excess of $1 billion, declared bankruptcy. How does he compare? He said, well, no comparison. I said, okay. Last week, a man in this very neighborhood where I live, at one time worth over $500 million, filed for bankruptcy. How does he compare? He said, no way. All right. Third example. A former governor of our state at one time was worth over $100 million. He just filed for bankruptcy. How does he compare? He said, no way. So I said, in other words, on his security bit there, we could have at least put a question mark, couldn't we? He said, yeah. I said, okay. Tell me about his friends. He said, well, he really doesn't have any. He said, he's kind of a jerk, if you want to know the truth, in that department. He said, I just admire him for what he's done. As far as friendships, as far as friends, none. I said, in other words, we give him a failing grade on that one? He said, yeah. I said, we've already dealt with peace of mind. The ulcers took care of that. I said, tell me about his family. He said, his wife is divorcing him. And I said, well, now let me make certain I understand this. Out of the 7 things that everybody wants, he gets a question mark after 1, a plus after 1, and 5 failing grades. Then I asked the young man a question, and I'm going to look you right in the eye, and I'm going to ask you the same question. I said to the young man, considering this, would you at this moment change places with him? He smiled, he shook his head, he stood up, he stuck his hand out. The interview was over. You see, what he was doing, basically, he was looking at one narrow facet of life, and that was a few dollars. But when I talk about planning to win, I'm talking about winning the whole ball game. Yes, you really can have it all. You might say, well, Ziegler, how do you know you can have it all? Well, there's some outstanding examples. For example, a study was done in a major publication in America on 1,139 chief executive officers. Their number 1 priority is their family. Over 90% of them exercise regularly. Less than 10% of them smoke. Their number 1 asset is their integrity. Another study was done on 1,361 corporate vice presidents. This was done by Korn Ferry International, a New York executive search firm, in conjunction with the UCLA University School of Management. And of these 1,361 vice presidents, 87% of them still married to their first wife. 92% raised by two-parent families. 89% have 2, 3, 4 or more children. 71% said that whenever they had any extra time, they always spent it with their families. Balance is what I'm talking about. Now, please hear this. I want to say it because it's so important. Sometimes when I give statistics like that, I know there are people who will view this who have in the past had some difficulties. Some who will have been divorced. And many might be sitting there thinking, well, I guess that kind of lets me out. Listen, the past is the past. Let me say it again. Failure is an event. Let me say it and make it clear. Failure is an event. It is not a person. We do what we do when we do it, according to the information we have available to us at that time. Most of us feel we're making the best decision under the circumstances and the information we have. The purpose is not to look back with regret at the past, but to look forward in hope to the future. Success is not measured by what you do compared to what somebody else does. You might have 10 times their ability. Success is measured by comparing what you do to what you are capable of doing with your ability. See, I'm not talking about beating anybody. I'm talking about you being number one. And you're number one every day when you look in the mirror every day and say, today I'm going to give it my best shot. And at the end of the day saying, today I gave it my best. And what this does is enables you to give your best. So how do you build that foundation for that peak performance so that you can get the things that most people deem in that area of success, to be happy and healthy and reasonably prosperous and secure, and have friends and peace of mind and good family relationship? I'm absolutely convinced that the foundation has got to be solid. Some years ago, I was up in Calgary, Canada, had a chance to go on top of Calgary Tower. We were going to the restaurant. As we stepped aboard the elevator, the recording came on. This is Calgary Tower, built at such and such a time. It weighs 13,000 tons. 7,000 of those tons are underground. It goes 626 feet up in the air. Now, I can't relate to 626 feet. That's way up there. But when I remember that is 2 football fields and then 26 more feet straight up in the air, I get a picture. And when you talk about 7,000 tons being underground, then I understand why it can go so high. With that foundation, you see, it can go way, way up. With the proper foundation, you can go way up in your career, whatever the career you have chosen might be. So what are these foundation stones? Well, the first one is honesty. Plain and simple. As I travel the world and ask people what is one of the most important qualities of success they would identify, 7 times out of 10, whether I'm in Auckland, New Zealand or Augusta, Maine, 7 times out of 10, they say honesty. And in 100% of the cases, before I get to number 10, honesty is always in there. It's the bedrock upon which we can build. And yet, in many homes, we talk about honesty. We say to our children, for example, tell the truth. The telephone rings. Tell them I'm not home. Many parents do not realize that when they teach their child to lie for them, they've just taught the child to lie to them. Many business people do not realize that when they permit their associates, their secretary, whoever, to lie for them, they have just laid the groundwork for that employee to lie to them. Dr. Mortimer Feinberg, a PhD from New York City, wrote a book entitled Corporate Bigamy. In this book, he speaks of interviewing 100 of the chief executive officers of the 500 largest corporations in America. He asked the question, what is necessary to go to the top and stay there? And the key is, and stay there. The consensus, you build your career on honesty and character and integrity, and then they threw in the word motivation. They summed it up by saying, anybody who thinks they can go to the top and stay there, who's not honest, is dumb. Now, folks, that's about as clear and strong as you can make it. The second foundation stone we need to build our lives and our career on is character. A good friend of mine gives what I believe is the clearest, most concise, accurate definition for character that I've ever heard. He says character is the ability to carry out a good resolution long after the excitement of the moment has passed. So important that we understand that, because you see, a lot of times we get excited, and then when the excitement dwindles, what do? Classic example, your opportunity clock sounds off early in the morning. Now, negative people call it an alarm clock. But you know, you sound the alarm when they're robbing the bank, and that scares people. No wonder they're negative. It's an opportunity clock. If you can hear it, that gives you a chance to get up and go. If you can't hear it, that might mean you done got up and gone. Well, anyhow, the opportunity clock sounds off. And as it awakens you, you realize that you don't feel good. And you lay there thinking bad thoughts about yourself and feeling sorry for yourself. Oh, I just don't feel like doing anything. But today we've got a special project down at the company. The team is expecting me to be there. I guess I'll get up and go. You do a little halo adjustment. You get out of bed, you know, having a real pity party. You struggle in and wash your face. You get a cup of coffee and decide you're going to live after all. And feeling ever the martyr, you drive down to work. And an hour after you've gotten there and gotten involved, you forget you ever had a bad feeling in your life. Character demands that you make the effort when people are dependent upon you, and especially you and your career. Feelings are not always reliable. Character, so important. The third foundation stone is integrity. I love what author Tom Peters, who is well known for his work with major corporations, Tom Peters says that winners and losers always have been and always will be separated by that one word, and the word is integrity. A powerful foundation stone upon which we can build. Years ago, Emerson put it this way: what lies behind you and what lies before you pales in significance when compared to what lies within you. Emerson said something else that we need to hear in our today's world. He said, ability without honor has no value. I believe he's 100% right. If you will check the records in the world today, you will discover that all great failures are moral failures. Dr. Robert Coles at Harvard University did a 20-year study. In this study, he came to the conclusion that parents who want to give their children the best chance for success in life will teach them strong moral values. He's right. He's right on the target. But listen to what St. Augustine said about you. 399 A.D., and I paraphrase him, he said that man travels hundreds of miles to gaze at the broad expanse of the ocean. He looks in awe at the heavens above. He stares in wonderment at the fields and the mountains and the rivers and the streams. And then he passes himself by without a thought. God's most amazing creation. The fourth foundation stone is faith or trust. Now we go through life in faith. We walk in our home, we flip on the switch. We have no idea how the electricity works, but in faith we turn it on. We drive 1,000 miles in a strange service station. We say to the attendant, if one is around, fill it up. In faith, it is gasoline and not milk. In other words, we demonstrate faith all the time. You need faith in yourself. You need faith in your country. You need faith in your company. You need faith in what you're doing. Faith and trust is so important. The fifth foundation stone is the stone of love. When I think of love, I think of one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard. I have a close friend from Winnipeg, Canada. His name is Bernard. They have a son, David. When David was born, he had cerebral palsy. Many doctors said he would never be able to walk or talk or count to 10. They found a doctor, however, who was very optimistic and very positive, in addition to being possibly the greatest expert in the world on cerebral palsy. He gave them some real hope, and they started the treatment program. When David was about 18 months old, they had to start putting heavy leg braces on his legs every night. And every night, as either mom or dad would put those leg braces on him, he would lay there pleading, Mom, do we have to put them on so tight? Or Dad, can't we leave them off just this one time? Now, David was an absolutely beautiful child, olive complexion, coal black hair, beautiful green eyes. Can't you imagine the anguish that was in the hearts of Bernie and Elaine Lofchick? Every night, their baby pleading, do we have to put them on tonight? But Bernie and Elaine Lofchick loved David so much, they said no to the tears of the moment so they could say yes to the laughter of a lifetime. Today, that little boy is a grown man, has been enormously successful in the business world, happily married, has children of his own, 195 pounds, a barrel for his chest. But the love bit is so important. You see, when you love somebody, you do for that person what is best for that person, not necessarily what that person wants you to do. What a foundation to build on. Loyalty is the sixth foundation stone that we want to build on. So important. I mentioned those 1,361 vice presidents earlier in this presentation. And what I said there was how successful they were, how well balanced they were. I could also have added that the average number of years they'd been working with their company was 16 years. Maximum number of times they'd changed job was twice. Loyalty is important. Loyalty to your own conviction as a foundation to build on. Have you noticed that nobody is happy in their career if they cannot give their focused attention to the company they're working for? If they're saying negative things about them. I'll confess, a couple of years ago, we lost a very valued employee. Boy, I hated to see him go. All the time he was with us, when anybody would ask him about us, this guy would say, you cannot believe what a magnificent company I work for. Oh, they're absolutely wonderful. He was loyal. And you might say, well, then why did he leave? Very simple. Somebody made him, what was for him, a much better offer. Now, let me ask you, why do you think he got the offer? Had he been out saying, you can't believe that dirty dog I work for, that's a lousy, sorry company, do you think employers would have been saying, man, that's the kind of guy I want working for me? Or would they have said, no way? What a marvelous foundation to build on that we've talked about. For example, let's say you've got a 16-year-old who's been raised on this foundation, okay? And your 16-year-old goes down to get a job. And the employer says, what is your experience? If your child says, well, I helped my brother one time deliver papers, chances are pretty good they're not going to have a job. But suppose he's able to say, I've had 16 years experience at telling the truth. I've had 16 years experience of complete integrity. I've had 16 years experience really caring about what happens. I've had 16 years experience not only of loving people, but loving the opportunities that come in my society. I've had 16 years experience of being loyal. And you know, I believe that's the kind of experience that your company can use. Boy, that puts it in a different perspective, doesn't it? How do you build that foundation? What is this idea of success? I want to share with you one final story that I believe sums up the key to building a foundation, building a life, building a career, building anything. It involves the Chinese bamboo tree. You see, the Chinese plant the seed. They water it and they fertilize it. But the first year, nothing happens. The second year, they water it and they fertilize it, but nothing happens. The third year, they water it and they fertilize it again, and nothing happens. The fourth year, they water it and they fertilize it, nothing happens. The fifth year, they water it and they fertilize it again. During that fifth year, in a period of approximately 6 weeks, the Chinese bamboo tree grows roughly 90 feet. But did the Chinese bamboo tree grow 90 feet in 6 weeks, or was it in 5 years? And the answer is obvious. It was in 5 years. Because had there been any year when they did not water it and fertilize it, there would have been no Chinese bamboo tree. What does all of this say? It really says you work on your foundation, you work on your life, you work on your career all of your life. You keep watering, you keep fertilizing. And I'm absolutely convinced that if you'll buy that concept, that I can close this session, as I close all sessions, by saying, if you'll do these things, I'll see you. And yes, I really do mean you at the top